Taking a Walk.
I never thought in a million years that I would be fronting the band that was plastered all over my wall as a kid. Life kind of unfolds, the journey kind of opens doors for you that, you probably wouldn't have opened or even fathomed as possible. Never in a million years when I was listening to Sublime as a kid did I think that one day I'd be jamming with Bud and Eric singing those songs. It's crazy.
Welcome to another episode of the Taking a Walk podcast, the podcast where we dive deep into the stories, the journeys, and the passions of incredible artists and creators. And today, Buzz Knight welcomes Rome, a musician whose roots run deep in California and Mexican heritage. And his guitar has been shaping his sound since he was just 11 years old. You might know Rome as the voice and soul behind Sublime with Rome, the band that's carried forward the legacy of the iconic Sublime. From learning his first song by Sublime as a kid to touring and recording with the surviving members, Rome's journey is one of passion, perseverance, and evolution. Rome's got new music out called Why Me? And he talks with Buzz Knight on the Taking a Walk podcast right now.
Hello, Rome, and welcome to the Taking a Walk podcast.
How's it going, man? Thank you for having me.
It's going fantastic. Thank you. So since the podcast is called Taking a Walk, I wanted to ask you, Rome, if you could take a walk with somebody, living or dead, preferably around music, but that's not mandatory, who would you like to take a walk with, and where would you like to take that walk?
Man, that's a good question. Well, the first person that comes to mind would probably be my grandpa, just because, I feel like as a man now, he passed away before I could, kind of get to know a little more about, or get to the point where I wanted to know more about the family, So probably walk with him, ask him some questions, probably explain a lot of stuff that goes on in my head anyway. But then in terms of like entertainment, if I could take a walk with somebody, man, off the top of my head, like first person that came to mind was Jimi Hendrix. For obvious reasons, but he's just such a creative guy. I would just love to, hear what kind of stuff he had to say about, just movies and art and just kind of pick his brain.
I got chills thinking about both of them, including the Jimmy response. And I have this feeling you and Jimmy would be kindred spirits, because Jimmy seemed to emote this tremendous sense of certainly creativity and passion, but amazing sense of gratitude. And I see you at this place in time in your career, and I feel like you are exuding your own sense of this tremendous gratitude. Am I right on that?
Oh, thanks, man. I'm for sure. I mean, it's like for me, I've already done more than I've ever could have imagined, and there's still things that I 100% want to accomplish and do, but once you get to a point where you're actually able to put food on your family's table through music, that's a very, very that's a blessing. And I don't know, I'm at that point now, I have 3 children and my wife, and it's I'm very grateful to be able to be still playing music and having fans that listen to the music that I make and music that I've been associated with. And I've gotten to tour the world with my favorite band for more than a decade, and I made it out all right. I'm in a wonderful marriage and I have beautiful children, and I'm very grateful for that. And I think that's a huge contributor to even why I continue to want to do this professionally. I want to put that message out into the world.
Fantastic. We're going to talk about Why Me and the behind the scenes creative process that led to it. It's outstanding. And also, I want you to be able to tell everybody about the music festivals and performances that you're going to be certainly making the rounds at as well.
Oh yeah.
But you just turned 37. How do you feel about this milestone? Does it change how you look at your music or your life in general?
Uh, for me, it's like I was just having this conversation with my mother-in-law because I love growing older, and I know people hate it. I'm just kind of figuring out like the health part of it. Like working out and eating right. Like I've been in that world for the last like 6 months now. But in terms of like mentally and emotionally, like growing up is awesome because you just like you get more and more in tune with what you like. And my mother-in-law was saying, which I couldn't help but agree with, but like, and she's got like 20 years on me. The older you get, the less like you give a shit about what people think, and like you just get more sure of yourself. And I just like I couldn't help but agree. Even at my age at 37, you just get to this point, where you're like, man, I got 3 kids that are like doing all right. Like I'm gonna be fine. Everything's gonna be all right, and that's not a big deal. That's not a big deal, and you just kind of get to this place. So to make a long answer shorter, I definitely love the fact of growing and becoming smarter and more aware, and the flip side of that is time becomes less and less of something that you have. Um, just in terms of your responsibilities, and that can put a real big damper on your creative process. So that's one thing that has been, a little less than favorable with like growing up is like, I definitely miss the time of just sitting around and just sitting in the studio all dang day and making music, going to bed and waking up and doing the same thing. But that's probably not a very healthy lifestyle either. So I'm rolling with it, man. I love it.
Tell me what it was like being born and raised in California. What was childhood like? And talk about, just that aspect of your journey in California.
Yeah, man. Well, so I grew up in the 90s, like your typical 90s child. My earliest memories of music were Bob Marley, Fleetwood Mac, Motown, so that was like the Supremes and, anything from Stevie Wonder or Smokey Robinson, of course, and Rolling Stones and Led Zeppelin and hip hop that was on the radio. So it was like a pretty eclectic, mix of music. But I mean, it was like my mom and my dad. And those were some of my earliest memories were musical memories, really. I was very much a fan, where I grew up in the Bay Area. It was, heavily inspired like by like gang culture. There was, the Bay Area is synonymous for its own music industry. It's its own music, genre really. It's like hip hop, but we got like artists that have just really been fundamental to West Coast rap, shout out to E40 and Too Short and stuff like that, Mac Dre. So needless to say, all my peers at school, everybody I knew, it was like hip hop, hip hop, hip hop. And, I would hear all this like soul and other kind of music from my parents. And I took a trip down to San Diego where my family was from. And I like heard like Sublime for the very first time, which was kind of a trip because it kind of put all of this, all that music that I was talking about, it put it all into one, which I thought was just so awesome. It was so fresh to me. I think I was like 11 at the time. And I just remember hearing this music and, it would be borrowing melodies from like the Supremes and it would be like, doing like punk rock stuff, which I hadn't even really heard punk rock yet at that point. Sublime was my introduction into punk rock. And, so hearing that for the first time but like, had some stuff from like hip hop samples in there. And so it just really blew my mind. And from that point on, like honestly, from like listening to Sublime, it really transitioned me from like being like a listener to like me wanting to learn how to like play an instrument, and I got a guitar, and then shortly after getting a guitar, I just started to I played that thing all the dang time. And the more I played guitar, the less I was skateboarding. And I could kind of like, I got to a point where, because the only thing I loved in the world was skateboarding. So I got to this point where I was just like, you know what? Like, I think I can probably be a better guitar player than a better skateboarder. And I just really started investing all my time in the guitar playing. And yeah, eventually that, a lot of the stuff that was going on in my family, my dad had his stint with drugs for most of my childhood. And so that just created all kinds of chaos in the house, everything that you would imagine. And that was really monumental in like my growth as like becoming a songwriter, leaving the guitar, like guitar player mentality and stepping into like singing and writing songs about all that stuff. And that's when like music really like transformed for me, where like, the dip in my grades was like for real. It was like I was like all in. I just wanted to go to LA, start meeting people, and just start recording these songs. And yeah, that was like the, pretty much the start of like high school. And that was like a really troubling time because I just like couldn't get my shit together in school, man. I just wanted to play on that guitar and start bands. So, but yeah, that was kind of like, the cadets version of a up and down lifestyle and up and down California, between Northern and Southern California in my upbringing.
But it's really a storybook, really life here when you get to, join a band that you were a fan of and tour and record. I mean, you must have just, pinched yourself in amazement of what you had accomplished.
Dude, it was crazy. Like, all I ever wanted to do when I was a kid, you know how like they tell you to like hold your breath when you're going under like a bridge, or you're going like in an underpass, or like you're going over a bridge, hold your breath and make a wish, right? Ever since I was a kid, man, all I could remember was like when I blow out the candles and I'd make a wish, and you're not supposed to tell anybody. All I would wish was to be a professional musician. And I would say those words because I wanted to at least be able to live off music, Like I had a couple uncles that like play guitar, and they were just like, just living a miserable life. And I just I at least wanted to put some food on my table playing the guitar. I didn't want to go to college to like get to this point now. Like that's where a lot of the gratitude comes from. And, moving to LA was like, it took so much to like then get to LA. But then like, what happened in Los Angeles really didn't pan out the way I thought it was going to pan out either. Like I never thought in a million years that I would be fronting the band that was plastered all over my wall as a kid. That was just something that, life kind of unfolds, the journey kind of opens doors for you that, you probably wouldn't have opened or even like fathomed as possible. Never in a million years when I was listening to Sublime as a kid did I think that one day I'd be jamming with Bud and Eric singing those songs. It's crazy. And during that journey, I met this band called the Dirty Heads. And this was...
I've heard of them.
This was a year before I even met anybody in Sublime yet. So I introduced to... I was introduced to the Dirty Heads, and I started hanging with those guys, and they were like just playing, probably to like 50 people in like bars and clubs and stuff. Just like getting that phase going in the van, And when I met them, like I listened to their music, I saw like their YouTube stuff, and I was like, oh, dude, they're so good. Like their music is so rad. I was a little more in like, funny enough, kind of doing what I'm doing now, like more music that is like I'm making now. That's kind of where I was before I joined Sublime. And so when I met the Dirty Heads, I was listening to what they were doing, with their first record. And I was like, man, it's such beautiful music. I loved their mixture of everything. So naturally, we were like, let's write a song together, man. I was living in my van at the time. They all had day jobs. And we wrote this song, this little old song, Lay Me Down, and we liked it. It was cool, but they already had a record that went out just 8 months prior. So they weren't in no rush. Their label wasn't in any rush to go and get in the studio and record a song. And man, that song sat around for like a year. And one day, our manager, who I later ended up being managed by the same manager as the Dirty Heads manager. The Dirty Heads manager took their demo, like a CD of like a stack of songs, so like maybe 4 or 5 songs. Took them up to Kevin Weatherly over at K Rock, who's like the most influential man in alternative radio.
I know that guy.
You know Kevin Weatherly. Big shout out to
Yes,
Kevin
I do.
Weatherly for changing all of our lives. Big shout out to Lisa Warden. Love you so much. These were great times, man. And our manager, Cheese, like, he played them, the song. They had this song with Slash playing guitar, and that was like the one. He was like, okay, this is the one. We loaded it up. This is the good song. We got Slash as a feature. This is the one. But our manager's assistant, her favorite song was Lay Me Down, the song that me and the guys did, which was just a crappy old demo we just put together at a homie studio. And so she put that song at #1. God bless her heart. Shout out Tamara. And man, Kevin Weatherly popped that CD in, hit play in the meeting, and freaking Lay Me Down started. And she's my manager, damn near had a heart attack, but he already started vibing. So you don't stop the man. He's already tapping his toe and shaking his head. So it's like, whatever. Man, he loved the song. He played it back 4 times in a row. He was like, play it again, play it again, play it again. He loved the song, was like, this is a hit. This, how it used to go back in the day, which it still does sometimes. And, man, the rest was history. He put it on. He's like, let's hear how it does on the phones. That was like a demo. Our manager was like, it's not even mastered yet. He's like, oh, you want to hear how it sounds mastered on the radio? Here you go. We're going to go play it. And he just goes and plays it, and the phones blew up like crazy. And, I mean, that song really changed our lives overnight. I got a publishing deal within a month from Sony ATV. And, because I wrote half that song with the guys, and they were like, hey, do you got more songs? And I'm like, that's all I do is sit and write songs. Like, of course I got more songs. And so they were like, here's the deal. Can you write more songs for other artists? And I didn't even know that was a thing. So I started writing all these songs for all these other artists and getting introduced to all these just amazingly talented people, where I am like easily the least talented person in the room for like years, and just soaking it up, man. And it's just been such a fun ride, like, to, that part, and then like, boom, joining in with Sublime, and then getting to tour around the world. So, you just never know, like, keeping an open mind. And I think that sort of like humility of like, I just still can't believe that, like, this is what I can do for a living. I don't have to go work at like, do roofing anymore. So it's like, yeah, it's rad. I'm very grateful for that. And I think that sort of energy is like what keeps me waking up in the morning and like after it,
Oh, no doubt. No doubt.
We'll be right back with more of the Taking a Walk podcast. Welcome back to the Taking a Walk podcast.
So let's play this little game called Fast Five. I'm going to ask you 5 fast questions and get your comments here.
All right.
First of all, first album you ever bought?
Self-titled, Sublime.
First concert you ever attended?
Vans Warped Tour. I wanted to see 311 in Bayside.
First time you heard your music on the radio?
Oh man, I was like sitting on my friend's couch watching TV. It was actually his girlfriend's, and my manager, it was that day, he called me and was just like, "Hey, what are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm just sitting on the couch watching TV." He's like, "Turn on K Rock in 5 minutes," and then he's like, "Call your mom. You're going to be a rock star." And that's what he said. And I was like, what are you talking about? And yeah, I heard Lay Me Down on. We went in my homie, his girlfriend's, she used to drive like this baby blue, like VW Bug. It's like a 2012 or something. And, no, it was older than that. It was 2007 because the song came out in '09. And yeah, man, we just sat there and I almost blew her speakers out. We turned it up so dang loud. And yeah, you never forget that moment. Even to this day, it don't matter where you're at. When you hear yourself on the radio or, come on the satellite radio at a restaurant or something, it's like the most just takes you right back to being a kid. And you're like, this is like why I do it. You know, I love this. I love that this is possible.
First moment you knew you were going to have a life of music.
Oh man. You know, part of being an artist is like that unshakable fear that all this is going to go away. But I just started to kind of get rid of that whole thing. Funny enough, leaving Sublime, I know that sounds ridiculous. Um, there's this kind of feeling with artistry where it's like almost too good to be true. That can drive you mad, but when you're kind of by yourself, when you're on your own, before you're like married with children and stuff, you don't really care. You know, young and dumb, young and reckless. You know, live fast, die young, right? You're just living for the moment. But once you start packing on like responsibilities, you know, to people that you love, your children, you know, God, you know, bless it, like God forbid you even become like somewhat remotely successful where you start hiring some of your family, like you start to, you know, build something that becomes greater than yourself. So you think it starts to make the art part and this whole dream and the career thing, like it starts to put pressure on it and a little squeeze on it, and things get complicated. And, you know, you see a lot of artists that just can't handle that. Either they quit or, you know, they harm themselves with drugs and alcohol, or, you know, even worse, you know, they take their own lives. I mean, everything in between. I think it's important to kind of shake all that and, you know, to make a long story short, just within the last year, honestly, leaving Sublime was kind of when I was like, kind of figured out and trusted myself and trusted the world and God, and just was like, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen, but I know like I'm happy and I know I'm committed. And this is like, I have music that I would die for. And that's the energy, you know?
I love it. I love it. Okay, one more on the Fast Five. First instrument you ever bought?
First instrument, guitar, electric guitar. Yeah, my dad, he got one at a pawn shop and brought it home, and haven't put it down since. I'm now like 11 years old.
11 years old. I love it. So take us behind the creation of Why Me. It's such an awesome project, and you know, this you described a little while ago, you know, the confidence that it took to make this move. You're at this moment in time, I think, that is a amazing moment. So take us a little bit behind the curtain on the creation of Why Me.
I'd love to. Well, it all kind of stems from like the pandemic, because Sublime with Rome had been touring, you know, every year since its formation. And like many other artists, when the pandemic happened, you know, we were forced to kind of throw in the towel for a little bit, and you know, kind of had some time off. So I started like live streaming, and a lot of people were sitting at home too. So these rooms were getting like really full. And, you know, I started getting all these fans. And after I ran through all the catalog and all the Sublime stuff and Sublime with Rome stuff, people were just like, dude, do you got any music that you're working on? And the honest answer was like, no. Like, I hadn't worked on music for myself in so long. I mean, I'd just been writing songs for other people. And that was like, I had all this time. So I was like, you know what? That sounds like a lot of fun. So I started waking up in the morning and going to the studio and just like putting together these songs and kind of putting together my whole like sound that I was like really after in my head, like the sounds that I loved and the music that had the most inspiring, like that was the most inspiring to me. And I wanted to just kind of fuse all that together and you know, see what happens, you know, because it wasn't like I was gonna like put an album out and go on tour. It was like the pandemic, you know. And once I started doing that, man, it just like became such a labor of love. Like, because most other songs that I would write, they were for a reason. They were for an artist or for, you know, an A&R would hit me up, or, you know, we need this kind of record for this artist. Are you interested to take a session? Here's a couple songs, you know, or with Sublime, you know, I had other people, you know, they had to listen to the music. And so this was something that was just so free and so creative, and it, you know, and it just created like a sound for me and an outlet. So after a while, I just like really couldn't like get away from the music. It was like all I really wanted to do, you know. Even being on the road with Sublime with Rome, I would start really thinking about, you know, once it opened up the world, I would just be thinking about wanting to be at home and like record this music and like, you know, oh man, I want to play this song of mine live in front of all these people. But you know, you can't do that. It don't work like that. And that's, you know, Why Me was one of the later songs that I really tacked onto the album. And it was because it was like my kind of just wrapping up my entire tenor with Sublime. And even like the single artwork of the song is a picture of me when I was 12 on my bed. And you can see like 6 Sublime posters in the background. Because, you know, that was my favorite band. Getting to tour around the world with them. And then now stepping into like my solo venture and putting out my first bit of music. I wanted to pay homage to that. And, you know, the song is just really about being grateful and about seeing the world through like a better lens. You know, I don't know who said it, but I heard this really cool quote where it's like, one of the most important decisions you'll ever make is when you wake up, if the world's going to be a good place or if it's like a harmful, terrible place. And I'm, you know, butchering that, but I just think that that is like so true. So I wanted to flip a age-old saying and like, why me? Kind of flipping on its head and turn it into about something, you know, about like, why me? Like, I'm so grateful, like, you know.
Can you talk about some of the other songs that really excite you to go out and, you know, show people at the festivals and other shows you'll be playing at?
Yeah, totally. So I have this other song that I'm just so excited for everyone to hear. It's called Slow and Easy. And this song is like, you know, really, it's about like me and my wife and just like, you know, focus on so many things and trying to have control over all these aspects of our life and make sure everyone's living optimally, you know, ourselves last on the totem pole always. And I wanted to write about that and just kind of write a song about unplugging and just taking it slow and easy and just kind of like getting back to the simpler kind of things and just, you know, disconnecting a little bit. And, you know, it has this vibe of the music that I love so much. You know, it's like this, you know, it's got like some rhythmic notes and the soulfulness of reggae, but it fuses like almost really, really effortlessly with like, you know, soul and like, you know, folk, like Van Morrison almost. So it's like this tone, like this sound that I'm just obsessed with that I think I've kind of stumbled into. And, you know, I'm just, it was so awesome the way it was, but then I was like, you know what? How rad would it be to like put the Dirty Heads on here? Because one, they're my brothers, and this is like one of my favorite songs on the record. So it would just be awesome for like a full circle moment, you know, like everyone is so used to, you know, like Lay Me Down, like whenever we're on tour together, I'll sing Lay Me Down with them. And, you know, it's like, it's kind of like a summer anthem for like our age generation. So I was like, this is like the most summer anthem track that I have on the album, and I got to put my boys on it. So it's like almost full circle, you know, and that's a song that's like really, you know, near and dear to me. And one of the other songs that I definitely want to highlight on the record is a song called New Me. And, you know, it's kind of like a double entendre where you know, it's talking about like, you say you knew me, but you never knew me at all, you know? Because it's like a newer version of yourself that sometimes people, they'll take for granted what's in front of them, and then like, you know, expect to keep you in like a box or whatever. And you know, it can happen in relationships very often, but, you know, it could also happen in, you know, business relationships and in bands and all kinds of, anytime you're dealing with another people in general, you know? And I wanted to write about that sort of feeling and that sort of experience. So that's another song that I'm really excited for the world to hear. You know, it's cool being able to. I have these shows and these festivals that I've been playing. You know, Cali Vibes and Cali Roots and Summerfest, July 15th, and all these cool festivals. And I feel like I'm kind of doing it like my music career now, I'm kind of doing it in like a little more of an old fashioned way where I'm writing these songs on like that guitar, and then I'm going live and I'm just playing them. And I'm getting the feedback and I'm like seeing what's moving. I'm like, that bridge is too long, da 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 da, or like, this song's boring, or, and I'm kind of like, and then I'm coming home and then I'm like, these are the songs that I want to record. And it's awesome, It's like so much different than like how a lot of it's done now, where it's like, it's just you in a little room like this and a little camera like that. And you just make and self mix and put it out and shoot and shoot and shoot and shoot and put it out and shoot and put it out. And that, I mean, as an artist, it sounds awesome, but it's not very fair to the art, is it? So I like living and I like being with my fans and letting them kind of help me determine the songs that we need in the movement,
You are in a zone. You know the term, the zone. You are in a zone. I could absolutely tell with this new music and hitting the road. By the way, you mentioned Van Morrison. Shout out to Van. If you haven't checked out his brand new song called Remembering Now, check it out.
Oh, check that out. I haven't heard that.
It's outstanding. It's one of his best things he's done in years. But I wanted to mention that for sure. So in closing, Rome, when you sort of think about younger Rome and Rome at this age, what would you tell younger Rome in terms of advice that you think about now as the older Rome?
Drink less alcohol, for sure. But like honestly, if I didn't drink less alcohol, if I drank less alcohol, I don't know if I would be chiller right now. If I'd learned, I had to go make a fool of myself a couple of times in the world for me to calm down. Just like I had to touch the fire. I'm one of those people, unfortunately, where like, no matter how many times you tell me, no matter how many videos or how many books, I just got to learn it on my own. And I learned a lot about life watching my old man. So I'm very grateful for that. I tell him that all the time. I love him for that. I wouldn't change a damn thing about it. Every night, everything that we went through, it made me who I am. I'm a good ass dad, and I take pride in that. That's the thing that I'm the most prideful about. All that stuff led me to this point now. So, but I would go back and say, hey man, like chill out on the booze a little bit and call your mom more,
I love it. Rome, congratulations on your solo debut. It's incredible music. I'm so happy for you, and I'm so honored that you came on the Taking a Walk podcast. Thank you, Rome.
It's an honor, Buzz. Thank you for having me, brother.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Taking a Walk podcast. Share this and other episodes with your friends and follow us so you never miss an episode. Taking a Walk is available on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, and wherever you get your podcasts.